You can just announce when Lisa walks in, if you want to.
Okay, it's working, Deb.
It's working.
Here she is.
Okay.
Here it is, we're good.
Okay, so, oh, we are, we're on. We're on. Okay, we're on. Okay, let's go ahead and get this meeting started. Commissioner Banks, do you want to lead us in our invocation before we call the meeting to order?
Once again, dear Father, we are gathered in your name, giving you thanks and giving you praise and lifting up your name. God, you have been so good to us, and bless our community. We pray that you continue to bless our community, our adjacent community, and our each commissioner and their family and their attendants tonight. Bless their family, and God, and give us the right directions. We ask this in your son Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Okay, we'll call this workshop to order. It's 6:05. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Right now, all of our commissioners are here and present. Unfortunately, Michael has been ill for a couple of days, and it was just best that he stay at home tonight. So bear with us with any technical hiccups we might have, but we're going to do the very best that we can. Thank you, Deb. She's been working on this all day to make this happen for us. So once again, we greatly appreciate everything that Deb does for us. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got the contract before us. I know everyone's probably had ample time to read over it. And so do we have any discussion?
Mayor, at some point, a different issue on the contract, the city manager called me and told me that he was ill. And, you know, we have never really discussed in a commission meeting procedures when someone is ill with a potentially COVID-like illness. I think it would behoove us to do so because I don't know anything more about this except that he's ill. Staff could potentially have been exposed. I think we need to know a little bit more about this and where we can get some guidance.
Commissioner DeVito, from time to time, everybody is going to get ill. And so I don't know Michael's condition. I've left that up to him to do the responsible thing, and he has. So possibly later on, we will discuss that. We can discuss that and come up with some procedures as we go forward.
But this is the time of virus. Other entities have been affected. The library's been affected. I think the city of Palatka was affected. They took certain steps to make sure that their staff and the public were protected. I don't really see that we're getting a lot of information or that we're taking any particular steps. It sounds like we're just going to wait and see.
What exactly are we waiting?
Or potentially other staff might become ill as well. I mean,
Well, we are here tonight to discuss the contract, and I think that that's what we should do. I know that I've taken all the precautions that I need to take. I think everybody else here in the building has also, and I think that we should move forward.
And I know that anytime that I've been interacting with Michael, I've had a mask on at all times. And I don't think we need to jump to conclusions here either. That's some private information. I don't think we need to jump to some conclusion that Michael has COVID. I know that he's had a sinus issue and for some time. And so quite possibly he's been burning the candle at both ends lately. And so I'm not going to jump to conclusions. I understand what you're saying.
It was in conclusion, but with COVID, you take precautions just in case. You don't make an assumption, but you take precautions
Okay,
just in case.
point taken.
Point taken,
Thank you
yeah.
very much. Okay, now can we get started on the contract?
Yes,
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
we have any discussions? Anybody want to start off?
Can we just start wherever? or
Yep,
what?
start wherever. Let's get it done.
Look at page 2A. Do we want to list specific duties? What do you think, Jay?
What, pardon me?
Look at page 2 and number 2A. PCSO will provide 5 uniform certified law enforcement deputies, officers dedicated to the city. Do we want to list duties there or just leave that kind of general?
Actually, the contract talks about, what they will be doing in general terms.
Okay,
They're going, basically, Commissioner, they're going to be, enforcing laws and ordinances of Crescent City of a criminal nature. They are not going to enforce our codes. They're not going to act as code enforcement. They're not, they said they're not equipped to be animal control. It speaks to that in the contract as to what they will be doing.
all right, good. We'll just leave it the way it is.
well, you know, I have a question on that too, though.
Okay,
Basically, it says it will provide 5 uniformed officers, which is nice, but we also had a verbal conversation about how those 5 would cover the 24/7 period. And I just wrote down here, this was a note that I wrote last time, that would be 4 shifts.
24 hours.
Yeah, 4 deputies and a floater. Is that correct?
And 2 on peak hours.
Now, that doesn't really say that here. It just says that they're gonna provide 5
Right.
uniformed officers, and I just wouldn't mind if that was just a little more clear within that 24-hour period or 24/7. You know, just to add the 4 shifts, 4 deputies, the 1 floater, and that, of course, was through the high impact type hours that they would determine. So that was my only question on that, just to kind of clear up exactly.
And if one gets sick, you're covered by another deputy.
Yeah.
And the sergeant will oversee this.
Mr. Sharp, do you have any, objection to that?
Just a little. Good morning, good evening, everybody. I'm Alex Sharp. I'm the general counsel for the sheriff. And I'm the one that drafted this along with Mr. Asbury over there. The reason that we are not going down and detailing out exactly what shifts the deputies are working, the hours and so forth, is because most of those things are subject to change depending on what's going on, your peak hours of crime and so forth. I mean, I'm amicable if you want to do that, but once it's put in the contract, then we're stuck with that without redoing the contract.
let me ask a question if I can, if this might work because the sheriff needs to have some latitude.
That's exactly what I'm
And
saying.
we understand that. So in adding that, the sheriff, based on peak hours, will determine placement of deputies within the jurisdiction of the city. Does that meet what you're looking for?
I think that's clear, because we never know when something's gonna come up with a peak hour.
Okay,
And he said
I
that,
just
that
wanna
initially,
understand.
once they get in,
Right.
that was my understanding, that they'll start to look at, the trends.
Mhm.
They have to look at those trends, and then at that point in time, they're gonna determine.
That's correct. And this, I mean, and you're not going to be operating in the dark because we will have a liaison officer assigned out here, one of the supervisors, who will relay that to your city manager.
Okay,
It'd be Just to give you an example, okay, it's been 3 months and we've been doing this shift work and assigning these officers to here. We're going to shift them over because we found that your weekends are your slowest period. And we want to concentrate on Thursday and Friday evenings. And you got to have that flexibility to do that. If you put in the contract, set dates, set times, when they're going to be out here, then technically we're violating the contract if we shift that around.
We could get ourselves in some trouble.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
and it already been in action. I called Michael when he became ill and told him about a situation I had and immediately they got right on to it and continuously doing it. And them cut down and the lady called me, very pleased with how they handled it.
Okay.
Mayor, could I ask a question, please? So I'm not quite hearing the assignment of the float.
We're talking about
All,
the 5 deputies.
all deputies.
So, okay, because I have a list of items that I wrote that I distributed to all of you
Mhm.
and through the city manager. And what the sheriff said to us, there's a number of things that the sheriff said to us that are not in the written contract. The first one is what was promised to us and we discussed was 1 deputy per shift and 1 floater. So we're no longer talking about 1 deputy per shift.
I don't know where you heard that, Commissioner. That's not what I said.
Well, the other thing, you follow that up with, it says there will be 1 deputy per shift and 1 floater to be assigned based on a certain need, which is basically what I think Michelle just said, where we kind of need them at those given times that they determine.
Okay,
That's the way I'm reading.
Because
your
you
note.
need, yeah, you have 1 per shift plus the floater, but that floater will be during those peak.
That's correct.
Yeah.
You still get the services of that additional deputy that's not assigned to a shift. And I guess the analogy I could say is, I mean, when you had a police chief, that police chief assigned his people to the shifts that he felt was necessary to protect the city. Is that correct?
He did.
Okay.
okay, well, wait a minute, we just went in a circle. The base representation that the sheriff made in the public meeting, and I believe is in his written proposal, is that the payment for 5 deputies was so that there would be 1 deputy per shift, 12 hours, 1 on, 1 off, so that we would always be covered. So are we getting 1 deputy per shift or are we not?
You're getting 5 deputies and we have 4 shifts out at the sheriff's office.
Right.
And if I'm speaking out of turn, I apologize. I haven't worked patrol in a very, very long time. I'm the attorney. But it's my understanding that on each shift, there'll be a dedicated Crescent City deputy to be assigned out here. That leaves you 1 additional deputy floating, who we will then assign during your peak hours.
Correct,
So you might have 2 at a certain time.
correct.
And the reason we want flexibility is we might
I'm
determine.
not addressing the floater. I'm addressing the lack of clarity. I'm hearing 2 different things. I'm hearing that all 4 regular deputies, besides the floater, could be redistributed and reassigned, that we wouldn't be guaranteed 1 deputy per shift. That's
Never
what-
have I,
No,
That's
that's
never
not
been-
what he's saying.
Yeah, well,
But that's what y'all are saying.
No,
that's not what we're saying.
no.
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 That's what it sounds like. Okay,
Right.
so, and this is what I wrote in my original notes, 1 deputy per shift and 1 floater. In the contract that was first distributed to us, it didn't say that. Does it say that now? I don't know where this contract came from.
I think that, when it was made clear that's what we wanted coverage 24 hours for the citizens of Crescent City. And that's what the sheriff is presenting us. Now,
Well, actually, no, it wasn't in the contract, so we have to make sure that it's in the contract. It's not in the contract that was first given to us, that I can see. I don't see where it is.
Okay, so if we did that, the sheriff, I mean, you can go back and say the sheriff will provide one deputy per shift and one floater,
Is that the board's will that you want us to put that language in the contract?
based on,
The need for the floater though, that's the,
but the sheriff, giving the sheriff the ability to determine where that floater is going to be.
right.
Well, that's what floater would mean.
But I think what we're trying to say is we want to make sure that we have 24-hour coverage.
Yes, ma'am.
And this is a little vague. It really is, I'll go back to kind of why I asked that question. It is a little vague. It really seems like you could put, it doesn't really say that it's covered for 24/7. It just says that, we can put two cops. Should I call you cops or sheriff?
You can call me anything you want.
Okay.
I am a
No,
police officer.
You don't want that, you don't want me to call you anything. But in all honesty, you could put both of those on
Well-
a day shift and nothing on the night shift. I mean,
We
yeah.
could, but that, we would.
I know you wouldn't do that, okay, but,
If you want some language in there, addressing that, I would suggest that we put that there will be 24-hour coverage of at least one deputy sheriff within the city limits of Crescent City. That still leaves us enough flexibility to shift that manpower around to
Right.
best suit the needs of the citizens.
Let's do that, that would be good.
okay, that's really.
And that's a very simple add-on, just
Just to
add it.
get that 24-hour coverage.
I'll add that to line A and draft that up for you in the final.
Another thing that we have I'm gonna move along here a little bit. The annual sum of $50,727 for a records clerk.
Page 4,
Can you,
Page 4, H. I'm sorry. My mind just follows my mind. I don't think about anything else, I suppose.
That's all right, you got a good minute.
But, I don't know, there's just something about Crescent City paying for a clerk. And I talked to Colonel Wells about this, actually just yesterday. And I also remember at our other workshop, they had mentioned that they really, the sheriff mentioned that they really didn't feel that they needed a clerk. However, I think at Crescent City, we need a clerk. And I think that we should take this out of this contract and not pay to provide the sheriff a clerk, but get our own clerk that possibly can help manage that, plus, I'm not sure if that would work, Deb. If you had a clerk that could work kind of, with the sheriff if need be, and also work with the city,
Okay. Can I
Is-
jump in here just a minute?
Sure.
Because
Well, wait a second. Wait,
Wait.
before I give you the floor.
Good.
Commissioner Burton needs
I
to
just
finish.
think that, when I talked to Michael, he was saying that a lot of times people come from all over asking for different things that the police wants permits. I don't even know, all the different things that people would ask the police for, but they would now be coming here to ask for it. And the way I look at it is eventually some of those permits and stuff ought to be online. You ought to be able to fill them out online and then come pick them up kind of thing. But I just don't think that we should pay the sheriff to pay that bill for them to have a clerk, and then they manage that clerk. We should manage the clerk. How's that sound?
Okay, Commissioner DeVito?
Colonel Wells specifically covered this in a public meeting. I talked to him about it a couple months ago, and in a public meeting, he said to us that the sheriff's office does not need a full-time records clerk at Crescent City, and that most of the duties performed by our administrative position there would be handled by various departments and personnel of the sheriff's office, such as training and record keeping. It was also mentioned in public meetings, Colonel Wells said this, that the PCSO administrative clerk could, or whoever we had over there, could provide law enforcement reports on request to all residents of South County. What he proposed in the public meeting was that Crescent City not pay for the records clerk, that be our position, mainly under our direction, and that the sheriff could cross-train that person to provide the law enforcement documents, which shouldn't be full-time. So I'm glad that Commissioner Burton is concerned about this also. That was a change from what was discussed in the public meeting to what wound up in the contract. And I think Commissioner Burton and I are both wondering, we need to decide if the person is working mainly for the sheriff's department, then Crescent City shouldn't pay. But Colonel Wells said that work was not needed down here. So to me, that's really an operational issue that our city manager and your management need to decide. But I agree with Commissioner Burton. If they're doing mainly sheriff's office work, then we shouldn't be paying. And if you don't need that person,
Well, we could use those funds for someone here. I mean, we definitely need another clerk, so.
right, but this was already covered by Colonel Wells, so I'm not sure why something so different wound up in the contract. And
Jay can speak to that.
Let me jump in just a minute. I think some of us are maybe forgetting all of the conversations that we've had in open meetings. The sheriff's office, I don't know if it's sheriff or his spokespeople, but they've said over and over, they do not need that building over there, and they don't need it staffed. They can operate out of their car. The city is the one that I've been hearing, we would like to have a presence over there for them to utilize that building, and then the conversation evolved into, well, we want the citizens of Crescent City to be able to go over there and get information. So maybe we do need a person over there. So it's not all on the sheriff here. I mean.
Oh, no, I'm not suggesting that it is.
No, I'm not arguing with anybody. I'm just saying it was my understanding that the city commission had sort of leaned toward, hey, let's have a presence over there. Let's have the deputies in and out over there. And let's have a clerk over there to service the citizens of Crescent City if they need anything. That's where I thought we were. Now, who pays him? Who pays the clerk?
Well,
That was something that in discussion, I think, with the city manager, and Deb can probably help us out a little bit with this as well, because she knows the mechanics of the office and how that works. And that was a concern that, not to put you on the spot, Deb, huh?
Michael really had this concern.
Yeah, well, he had the concern that if you have somebody going back and forth between the two buildings, with a clerk, and that's, I think, where this came out, that if they were gonna have it, we were gonna have it open to the public, then they needed somebody there to greet the public. Now, they can always do that they can come over to this office, but then we have to figure out the logistics of that as well, and that person could go over there and have access. Now, I don't know, Colonel Wells will be here. He had a prior commitment and he was on his way, but he can probably speak to that. Is there any liability in that with having that person have access to those records?
Well, right, and, well, go ahead.
Commissioner.
I think that the sheriff office is a much better record keeper than we are. They're gonna keep good records. But I just don't see the use of having somebody sitting over there just turning into police business. That's a throwaway of the city money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we need, we talking about, we looking out in the future of hiring a second person over here to fulfill one person duty. And that money would be in the budget to help us assign somebody over here. No more applications that we get. Basically, the time when we get application is somebody actually asking to use the park. But if we got another person over in the office over there, in the office here, as a clerk, she could help take care of that.
Mhm.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, we don't do a whole lot of business.
And we want to keep in mind too, that with this agreement, that if we find later on, I mean, if you want to take that out of this, that we find later on that we need to have that office open, that South Putnam, the community of South Putnam wants somebody over there, then we can always come back in and we can amend this. Is that correct, Alex, Jay?
Yes,
Okay.
we're not married to this. The sheriff's office put this back in and reiterate what Jay said at y'all's request.
Okay.
And that's why that was put back in. And I can speak for Colonel Wells on this issue. If you don't want us to have a full-time clerk over there for you, we're perfectly happy with that.
Yeah, he seemed okay not to do that, so. Now, I was surprised, Jay, that they really didn't really want a substation over there.
They could maintain from the start that it's not a requirement that they have that building.
Can I add something?
I,
It's 12 o'clock and he's the only one on duty and everything's closed and he's got diarrhea. Where does he go? Well, my point is, it'd be nice to have that key to that building to go use
I
some
don't know about the
facilities.
deputy, but I'd probably get near flashing light.
I think that,
I don't mean to be gross, I apologize, but the point is, I would like them to have access to the building, to be able to use the facilities, use the refrigerator, maybe go in and sit down and eat a meal once in a while. I wouldn't mind that at all.
I think there.
Well, the sergeant what patrol this end, the captain what be on this end, making around, they all would gather there at some time. The people would see the presence.
They may have meetings
Yes,
there, the boardroom or something,
Yeah, that makes
just
sense.
the possibilities.
And by having that building there, I know Captain Woods he's excited. He's got a lot of great ideas that he would like to do in the community, that allows, that they could possibly even have their community officer down here helping out a little bit in that building as well.
Right.
Now, we would just have to determine that by doing that, it will not be open to the public, but it would be open to serve the sheriff's office. The
Yes.
sheriff's office.
It would be video, that people could see the presence of the car, the patrol cars there. And the highway patrol stops there when our officers, that highway patrol would come in and they would drink
Right.
coffee.
Right, they might have a meeting or something.
They'll just have to make their own coffee.
Right.
Okay, so do we,
Mayor, can I say one more?
yes, Commissioner DeVito?
It is my recollection, and I feel like we're kind of arguing against ourselves here. It's my recollection that when the sheriff made his proposal in the public meeting and in the booklet that he gave us, that he did propose occupying that building as a substation.
That's my recollection as well.
Yes.
I absolutely
Right.
called
But,
that. and
but I
then-
also did
I'm sorry,
understand
I'm not finished.
at one point.
Commissioner
Sorry,
Burton,
Yes, I'm
wait
sorry.
just one moment. Commissioner DeVito?
That he did make that proposal. And there were some questions also in a public meeting. That was one of my questions. And also I asked that of Colonel Wells offline. That was great that they wanted to have that as a substation. I thought that was wonderful. But they did offer that. Absolutely.
And I'd like to interject here. You've been quoting the sheriff on all this, and yes, he has made these proposals to you. But I just want to be clarified on the substation. I think it's a great idea that you have a substation down here, and I pretty much can speak for the sheriff and Colonel Wells that that's a great idea. The issue becomes who's going to pay for it. And we don't have it in our budget to maintain another building. And that was our point of view, and that's why it was put in the contract as such.
Okay, well, he did initially offer it. So, he did.
We offered to man it.
Well, this is a pretty, if you look at the building, I believe you guys are going to be covering utilities within this contract. You're covering quite a few things, and what we are doing is maintaining the building.
The structural, the
structural
HVAC, the roof, the
The
main,
plumbing,
yes,
and we would have to do that whether you banned it or not,
that's correct.
So I mean,
Right.
I think it's a fair deal.
I do too. I want them to have access to it.
Okay, and I'm sorry, where in this contract are we finding who's paying the utilities? Can somebody point me to that? We've had two different
I'll do
contracts.
that. On page 3, and it's it's page 3, A and B. And basically it says,
All right, I got it.
that the sheriff will be responsible for all utility costs, including but not limited to voice and data hardware, software, connectivity for the subdivision. And the city agrees to keep the substation in good structural repair, including maintaining and keeping in good repair the roof, mechanical, high-back systems, electrical, plumbing, and all other structural components, which is something we would have to do whether someone was in there.
Right.
Regardless of what we do.
So I really do think that that's a fair deal. And it only cost us $1,000 last year, if I looked at the budget correctly, to maintain that building.
The roof leaks right now. I don't know how much that's gonna cost.
Well, that's all right. We'll have to take and assess all that for this year. I mean, one way or another, we have to.
Well, we want to maintain the building,
Yeah, we got to.
appearance of it,
So,
so we might as well, they always told me, if you want a home to go down, let the people move out.
People move out of it. Nothing like an abandoned building.
There you go. Something about the atmosphere when the body, humans is there.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay, so let's go back to this. We didn't finish up on H. Are we, is everyone pretty much in agreement that we would remove that? That we would remove H, which would be for the clerk, receptionist?
Yes, and include,
Right.
Subsection
Page
3H.
yeah,
4H, yes.
Yeah.
and along with that, on
I'm sorry, page 2 what?
letter D, Pasco should provide one administrative clerk at the substation. We want to remove that as well.
Oh,
Mr. King, would you?
You know, I think the general public would like to see a clerk there. You know, the big argument right now is we're losing so much. I don't think it's true, but that's what we're hearing. Let's keep a clerk in there. It's not that big a piece of payroll. And I think we'll find that we need somebody to go and address. I just think that'd be vitally important. We could always change it in a year back the other way if we need to. Thanks.
What if the clerk did double duty? They're over there, but they're doing also hourly working on things the city needs. Is that a possibility? Does it have to be exclusively for the sheriff's department? They could be doing city things, but over there. And be there to,
My understanding was that the clerk, that it would be beneficial to both parties, in as much as she would be there for sheriff, law enforcement
Right.
issues and questions, and she would be there to make public records or whatever available to our citizens.
But that does not include.
I looked at it as a two-way street.
Well, and I think the only change here is that instead of paying the sheriff to find that person, we would find that person. You know,
It's fine with me.
With Crescent
I'm not
City.
arguing the point.
that's, I think, the only shift, really.
You know, Alex, what do you think about, I mean, without Colonel Wells being here, I just know that there's a crossover there that we have to be really careful of because they have their records. And then you've got somebody that has access to very specific information that quite possibly doesn't need to be in this office.
If the city went with their own clerk,
Mhm.
which we're perfectly fine with, the aspects of getting the public records is it might provide an extra few minutes over time. She'd have to go through our records division to get those records.
Okay,
Whereas and that's basically what you're getting with the sheriff's office employee. She would be certified and she'd have access to our public records and our report record system. Whereas if it was one of your clerks, I don't see us doing that under our accreditation.
I wouldn't.
But that doesn't say she can't do it. You could have somebody over there, they would simply make a call to our records division and say, I have John Smith here. He needs an accident report from last night. And then it would either be faxed or emailed out to the substation here and then printed out and given to that person. It just would add some additional layers of bureaucracy, if I might say that, to the process, but it can be done.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, we're here to try to find solutions tonight, and work this out. What if, and Mr. King, let me run this past you as a resident. What if, because we're trying to do some cost savings here and we need a clerk here as well. What if we split this and you had a part-time clerk that worked for the sheriff's department over there and we had certain hours of operation, or you had certain hours of operation. You could do it Tuesday through Thursday. The clerk of court does that down at, over here in our county office. And people know that they can go in there, Tuesday through Thursday. I mean, is that something that we could consider, and then we could have, a savings there that would present a savings for us, and we could use the additional monies to help fund our clerk.
I think I can speak for Colonel Wells. I heard him say that in a public meeting, that yes, he is amenable to doing a part-time staff over there. And if you guys would then catch the other days, day on, day off or so forth, I can't see us not accepting that solution for you, whatever to make it work. We see the benefit of a substation. Budget wise, we just can't, take on another building.
Mr. King, as a resident, how do you feel about that?
I think, then you'd have to know what day to go. You're talking about
Well, you'd
their
have to
personnel
know-
one
you'd
day,
have
our
to know,
personnel the
yeah.
next.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it might be a little cumbersome.
Okay,
I'm all for saving a dime, believe me, but, gosh, I just don't know if there's enough things in this issue to try to chop it up.
Yeah.
Let's have somebody there, let's talk to them.
yes, Ms. Knight.
I just don't think that there would be enough business for a full-time clerk to stay busy for $50,000 a year.
I don't know,
I
Alex,
can't
what do you
imagine that
think?
there'd be that many records requests. When Cindy was there, she was dispatcher. She did all the FDLE filing. She kept all the records for the officers that were there. The sheriff's got staff that's doing that. It's not gonna be done at that substation. We don't need a full-time clerk.
Well, I mean, first of all, 50,000 covers a lot more than a salary. It covers retirement, medical benefits, insurance, and maybe even a civilian car to drive the person down here. But again, you can do it either way. It's just if the Crescent City employs the clerk, there'll be that extra level where they'll have to call into our records division and get those records. But she's right. We maintain our own records of the officers at our own station and so forth like that.
I've wondered the same thing. Is it going to be enough to keep everybody busy? And just from a housekeeping standpoint right now, because we need Alex up there, so just raise your hand and we'll acknowledge you from the audience. So, Commissioner Banks.
Your Honor, we definitely need another clerk in here. But by putting her over there, that would probably help, could send some of the workload can be assigned to that building.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, right, yeah.
They can still be there, but they're doing, because they won't be very busy. I just don't see that happening.
No, they don't need that bit.
But they can be assigned work from this building.
And have the substation open.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
put it in our budget. Just take it away from the sheriff, eventually, well, we needed none.
Yeah.
We need another clerk with every none.
Wants for,
So do you want to take
Alex
that
wants to
out?
say
I
something.
just have
Alex
one
needs
quick
to
point
say-
on that,
Yes, sir.
and this might go against our interest here. But if you do have that clerk, you guys are all right with her basically providing police services as well for us and the county, because not everybody that goes in there and asks for records is gonna be a city resident. You will have traffic from the south end of the county, middle of the county, that will travel out here. So if you do hire that clerk, is that gonna be an issue to you that they might be in the middle of getting that traffic report for Mr. Smith that wants it instead of doing actual Crescent City work?
I don't think that's an issue, do you?
If we pay the sheriff for that clerk, then we're paying the sheriff to do South Putnam work.
Right,
I don't know that it would be any different
Right.
than if we're paying our clerk. We're still paying someone else to do,
Do the work.
to do the
That's
work, to
similar
do
work.
a lot of the
Yeah.
South Putnam County work. And it's
I
just
understand.
coming out, it's coming out of the city dollars is what Alex is
Either
bringing
way.
to our attention, and we thank you for doing that. I mean, we need to be prudent with that.
Can I say
And then
something here?
the other thing I would like is I would like somebody from Crescent City to have a job. I would like that clerk to come from Crescent City. When he said that, geez, we could drive him down, we drive down from where? You know, that was my thought, like, where are we driving this person in from? I would love that person to be right here in Crescent City.
Well, we would, and
Yeah.
maybe I didn't make that clear on the context.
No.
That person gets vacation time, that person
Oh,
gets
yeah.
sick days. We would make sure that was manned
Yes.
Monday through Friday, whatever the hours it were. If we had to pull from our other records division, there'd always be a person over there. That is an advantage to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Commissioner DeVito?
Well, I thought I knew where we were, but now I'm not sure. So who's providing the clerk that would be over in the,
We're still discussing if we're gonna be the ones to provide the clerk.
Do we need to
well,
kind of-
the last, okay, then can I make a comment to that?
Sure,
The last I heard was that the city would provide the clerk. And truthfully, I'm not really sure that we should be adding and taking out paragraphs ourselves as commissioners. I think it makes more sense to say what we want, and Jay and the city's attorney figure out which paragraph to make happen. But basically, if we hire the clerk, then it seems to me that the services that are provided are under our direction and control, and that it would be optional to us as to what their hours over at the substation would be. And if we put them there a lot and make them available to provide records on an extended basis, we could do that. If we wanted to limit it the way you said, you know, records available Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever. But it would seem to me that if we're paying, that gives us the flexibility to decide what level of records providing or not providing we want to undertake at that substation.
okay, does anybody have any comment? About that, so we've got to decide, what do we want to do with this clerk? Do we want it, I mean, we have many options, I mean, you can do a part-time clerk that over there, you can do a part-time clerk here.
Mr. Sharp, could I ask you a question?
Absolutely, sir.
Can you speak on behalf of the sheriff that we have the unilateral ability to just knock that clerk out?
Yes, I've already talked with Colonel Wells on that. That was never an issue. There are some things I can give my blessing on, and there's some things I can't. My understanding, though, we're here to kind of tweak this contract. There'll still be another contract placed in front of you, so we can wipe away all we want. It's not a binding contract until all parties agree to it.
Absolutely.
But I just think it's the most practical, since the sheriff has said they don't need it, that we provide that position, and we, the city, have the flexibility. And it's a shame our city manager is not here. that we have the flexibility to define the service.
Okay, did somebody have a comment? Commissioner Frank, did you say? Yes, ma'am.
I'm a little surprised to hear the idea of having a so-called Jacqueline of all trades handling police clerk work. The police department, the now defunct police department, we see how it has gone with a civilian attempting to do a lot of things, and a lot of things got swept under the rug. So here we are today. We had a police department that we couldn't trust. That was the upshot, impartially due to that type of situation.
Okay,
So-
this was what we're talking about now, not to interrupt you, but just so that there's some clarity. What we're talking about now, that person would not be responsible for the record keeping, the certification, any of those responsibilities will be done in Palatka through the sheriff's department. This would just basically be there as an assistant to the residents, really, that come in and that they need a copy of their police report or they have a question. So is that, Alex?
That's my understanding, yes.
I just wanted to make sure that that we had, obviously, we hadn't provided that clarity, and I just wanted to make sure we had that clarity.
But that brings me to the point of if that individual has access to police reports, okay, then once again, we have a civilian with access to police
No.
information.
Alex, do you want to address that?
Request like any civilian would do.
Ma'am,
Any civilian can go to Palatka.
the situation that I explained is if the Crescent City decides to employ the clerk, that clerk will have no access to police reports. What they'll have to do is for that citizen is to call our records division, tell them what reports they need. Our records division in Palatka will redact the report and then send the redacted version to her to disseminate to the person that's requesting it.
To the clerk, in other words,
Yes,
to disseminate.
that's correct. They won't have, they will not be privy to any sensitive information. Anything they would receive would have already been redacted and cleared by our public records officer.
Alex, can I ask you a question?
Yes,
If
ma'am.
we kept that clerk and we house that clerk here, could that clerk act in that capacity as far as what you were saying? They'd have to go through your, through your office. They'd have to go through the bureaucracy, so to speak. But could we do that out of this office?
Yes, you could. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so they could come here.
Sorry if I wasn't clear on that.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just want to make sure that that clerk could still get those records,
Yes, ma'am, they could.
but they could act out of this office,
Yes,
work
ma'am.
out of this office. Mr. King, do you think that would be from a resident standpoint, knowing you could come here and get those same records?
Yes, I think that'd be great.
Okay,
Mm.
And we could put a sign on the door.
Yes. there would be a sign on the door that they had any questions that they would be directed over to this office. And that's because I have some concern with this as well, because you've got somebody in there 9 to 5, they have no relief, they have to go to the restroom, they have to go to lunch, they have to go to the doctor's appointment. At least here in this office, they would have that backup relief, and we could work it that way, and then that would help us as well. So, commissioners, do we have any comments?
I like that.
Yeah, I think that is good, but the presence. With our clerk working over there, doing the work out of this office over there. And then when we need something, just the presence of the officer coming in and meet with people. See, we got to boxing that opportunity out.
I don't know that we are, Commissioner Banks, because we'll still have they'll still have that as a substation. So anybody can, a deputy can have somebody come in and meet with them.
I would assume that we would set up some kind, just like we do at the sheriff's office, we'd set up some kind of walking complaint area where an officer could come in and meet with a complainant and take a report. I mean,
Yeah,
that's something that I think can be accommodated quite easily.
Because we got the phone outside there and people use it when our police department was operating. They always would go there because you couldn't get in that office at certain times. The young lady would go to lunch and she had doctor appointment. But the other part of it was open, but you couldn't get in, so you would have to go to the phone and call your complaint over to the sheriff.
I think the city of Palatka does that now. They only run administrative offices Monday through Friday,
Right,
and they have a call box outside for somebody to call.
right.
There's the man of the hour here now.
And the hour.
Okay, so where are we now?
So
We're all
where's
done,
everybody in, are
Okay,
we in agreement for the clerk to be housed over here? And
for
work.
Crescent City to have the clerk.
I don't think there's not that need to say that. I think it should just say that we pay it and we control the hours and where the person is.
Well, I think because for the sake of this contract,
Not in that.
basically what
No,
we're,
that's not what it's all.
what we're saying is to, take that out, okay, the clerk in here for payment of the sheriff. And then I think, once we do that, we can have a separate conversation, maybe not right this minute, as to how we're going to utilize the clerk that we hire
How that's
within
gonna
Crescent
work.
City. That's the way I think I would handle it.
I
Good
agree.
idea.
So I'm not sure how to go about, I mean, I can put an X through it on my paper, but how to officially,
Well, I think you would probably have to put some language in there. You would have to, you and Jay would have to put some language in there that we would have about our clerk here that would be able to access through your office public records request.
They would, again,
I know they can't get into your system, but just like you said, how they'd have to go through trying to get.
yeah, there'd be a policy. We'd have to set up some procedures, give them a phone number to call and so forth. There'd have to be some way, whether via email. I mean, I don't know if anybody uses a fax anymore, but usually we send records by PDS and email, so.
Okay.
so we're looking, like I said earlier, on page 2D. That's, I guess should be stricken from the record. I'm not sure how to say that. And then on page 5.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, you said strike 2E?
No,
D.
D as in
D.
dog. And then on page 4, I'm sorry, 4H. And we will get our own clerk at that point.
I think that's good.
So now I hate to be the one ramrodding all this, but my next question has to do with page 5, number 5. And I had a conversation with Colonel Wells on this. And I think right now I would like him to explain that whole thing because basically I think it's just not clear what all this means, what it means.
Okay, page 5, number 5 deals with the fact that we're asking the city to recognize that the hiring placement of new deputy sheriffs or deputy sheriffs inside the city limits isn't an instantaneous issue. So obviously the question will be, well, obviously the fact will be that if the city decides to enter into this contract with the county, that we have to add 5 deputy sheriffs, assuming that number hasn't been debated tonight, but I'm operating on 5. We have to add 5 deputy sheriffs to our ranks. So whether the deputies that get assigned to Crescent City are 10-year deputies that work somewhere else in the county now that we move in, or whether some of the deputies that come into Crescent City are brand new, we still have to bring on 5. And the minute that we bring them on board, we begin having to pay their salaries for the training and evaluation. Being an accredited agency, we're required and do even transfer lateral officers from other agencies must undergo our field training program. And that takes approximately 4 months. So then there's that lag time. Now, at no time in any of this, even if we have to hire and train these deputies, We're right now providing through an overtime basis deputy sheriff coverage inside the city. We'll continue to do that for the training period or to get up and running. But let's just say you want to know who your 5 deputies are. We want them to begin being the regular deputies in Crescent City. That's going to take several months to accomplish because we have to get the personnel trained up to accreditation and sheriff's office standards in order to put them here. But you won't have a lapse in coverage necessarily because we'll continue to cover it the same way we're covering it now with the use of overtime. So does that kind of answer the question?
Mayor, could I say something here?
Commissioner DeVito?
Yeah, this was an area that was on my list initially that I distributed to all the commissioners. And it concerned me greatly. I see that, and I don't even know what version of the contract I'm actually looking at this point, because there have been a couple, but they're not dated, and it doesn't say which one's first and which one's second. And the copy that I
I think it's
have,
the same contract that there's been no changes for the one that's in your
yeah,
file.
there were some changes. There was a second draft that got put on our desk, I don't know. But anyway, there's stricken language here that says during any employment transition time required to fulfill this agreement, the city will not be provided law enforcement services by the sheriff's office. So really what I understand you to be saying, and this paragraph has given me great concern, what you seem to be saying is that we will get coverage, but it will not be our regularly assigned deputy.
That's correct. We will cover the city for the duration of the time it takes to train and newly acquired deputies in the same manner we're covering it now through the use of overtime by all duty deputies, like we're doing now. So over the past week, you may have had 6 or 7 different deputies working out because it's all about who's off duty and who wants that overtime.
Okay, so what wasn't clear to me, and I think I've seen a couple of different ways that this was written, it's not clear to me that when there's an employment shift, I mean, does this go on, is this just for the initial startup time, or does this go on any time a deputy leaves?
No, this is an initial startup because this clause only pertains to the first 180 days of the contract. Am I correct? So this is the initial startup. Now there may be times where the deputy sheriff working in Crescent City puts in for gets accepted as a detective. So that deputy sheriff will leave Crescent City, but those are easy, instantaneous replacements. It's the initial startup. That's the point of this clause.
Okay, so we're paying, but I think what it should say is we still get the coverage. There will be a startup period before we have our regularly assigned deputies, and that should not exceed 6 months.
Correct. And I don't expect it to take 6 months. That would be the long end of it. That's
That would be the max.
Now, I will tell you, Mr. Vita, that I believe from the very beginning, a few of your permanent deputies will be in place because we've already had some deputies that may want to come to Crescent City. So if they're already here with us in training, and we can afford their on this, we could go ahead and transfer them in now and fill the vacancy they leave behind. So you're going to probably get some instantaneously.
So I'm saying what concerned me, and I think concerns Commissioner Burton also, is that there's so much verbiage in here and it's not clear, and it sounds like we're paying, but we're not getting the service. And we need to make sure we will be getting the 1 deputy per shift plus the floater from the get-go.
So correct, and that's why if you're reading the version, that's why we struck the last 2 lines that says during any employment transition time required to fulfill these agreement, the city will not be provided with law enforcement services. That has been stricken out of the contract.
But that's one thing, I know there's more than 1 version.
Right.
But it was in there before. Okay, so to me, and I'm hoping that the rest of the commissioners will agree with this, that basically we will give the sheriff a maximum of 6 months startup to give us our regular deputies. But when this contract was enforced and we're paying, we will be getting the specified coverage.
There'll be a deputy sheriff here from the get-go, just like there is now. You should see no change when the contract takes over immediately. They'll be being covered by the deputies. And then And then slowly but surely, as the deputies are permanently assigned to Crescent City, we'll make sure that we introduce them to you and the community as their permanent assignment.
I believe this speaks to that, Jay. Doesn't 5 basically say that we're giving them 180 days in order to be up and running?
Yeah, that's what we're discussing. If I understood the question correctly.
It was not clear, and initially it said they would be exempt from providing us for
Okay, well, we're working off of this draft. Okay, and this was the draft that was given to all of us by Jay at the last meeting, correct? We haven't made any changes to this since
I don't
we,
know if that's to you or whether I-
well, it was in our packet. It was in our packet.
Ms. Mayor, may I approach?
Yes,
This is the draft we're working on. I don't know what Ms. DeVito has, but if you would give that to her, that's the draft we're working on.
okay. I got it. Here. Let me date that. Hold on. 9/11. No, 9.
Put a version number on it, everybody makes sure.
I think I got it. Okay.
Make sure you put a date on it.
Maybe I'm looking at the wrong one also.
Mayor,
I got draft on that.
I have a question.
You have the right.
Okay. You have the right one. You have the right one, Commissioner Banks. Yes, Commissioner DeVito.
Yeah, I said the word payment, and that's something I have made a note about. Am I correct? Did I see that Crescent City's responsibility would be to make quarterly payments?
Yes.
Yes.
I have seen there are other contracts between sheriffs and cities that require monthly payments.
There are.
And a question that I have for our finance director is, we have a very small budget and our money comes in slowly. Would it possibly make a hardship on us to make the quarterly payments as opposed to monthly, the way the money comes in and is distributed from the different funds?
We just have to be careful at the end of the year that we hold money over for the first quarter of the new budget year, because right now we're fine with that ad valorem taxes.
Okay, well, let me ask it a different way. Would it help the finance department if we paid monthly?
You're adding one more burden onto your monthly payments as well.
I mean, I don't know, I'm just, now's the time to ask. So I want to know, because I've seen it done both ways, and I don't know if Debbie has looked at the contract.
I think we also need to ask though, before we go down that road, is to make sure with the sheriff's department, if being paid monthly from a bookkeeping budgeting standpoint.
Well, we spoke with our finance director on this, and technically you'll be paying the county. And the county
Okay.
requested that the payments be made quarterly.
Okay,
I don't see any advantage or disadvantage to the month or the quarterly. I mean, they're gonna take money if you present them a check, but
Okay.
they prefer quarterly. We had to put some measure and terms in there for payment, so we chose what they suggested.
okay. So Debbie,
Quarterly's probably gonna be fine, it's less work for whoever's gonna be here.
I think the county felt the same way.
Isn't it gonna be done? We're trying, but. So,
okay. Do we have any other comments, anything else that anybody sees that has some concerns about? I do know that I asked them, even though they have been providing this for us for some time, that they add the 911 calls and dispatch to the services that they provide to us, just so that everybody is, they've been doing that already. So I just think in the services down here.
Absolutely, no problem with that. Yeah,
Okay.
we do, like, provide the consolidated emergency dispatch center for all of our municipalities, but we absolutely should reflect that in the contract.
Okay.
Mayor, you saying the contract should reflect that they will continue to provide dispatch for us?
No, what I'm saying is in 7 on page 5, 7, it talks about the services associated with the law enforcement, and that they just add that to it, the 911 calls and dispatch.
Okay.
Does anybody have anything else that? Commissioner DeVito? Uh-huh.
I do.
Okay.
There are quite a few things that were offered or represented in the public meeting that did not get included in the contract as far as I can tell. Let's see.
Do you have those
Yeah.
ready?
I do.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I do. I don't see specifically what it says in the contract that the same officers will be assigned to Crescent City. And it doesn't, I had a concern, I think the language should be tighter. It doesn't specifically say that if the deputy is out. I think I was more concerned about this with the first draft. I mean, it just should say, as we said before, that we're getting the 24/7 coverage. But it doesn't say that we will have regular officers assigned to Crescent City as far as I can tell.
Is dedicated being assigned, or dedicated, doesn't that mean that they will be the 5 that are assigned to Crescent City?
The different word, but about the same.
Yeah.
Is that the same meaning? I assume that it was.
Yes.
Dedicated was, okay, so that's on page 2A.
With the understanding that they're gonna have time for their own vacation, they're gonna be out sick, they've got a doctor's appointment, and they've got to have somebody else fill in.
Commissioner Burton, it's on page what, where?
Page 2A, it says they will provide 5 uniformed certified law enforcement deputies dedicated to the city. So my question was, dedicated, assigned, is that the same? And I was told yes. So it'll be 5 officers, same officers dedicated to the city.
Dedicated is better than assigned. You can reassign. I don't think you can rededicate.
Right, there you go.
Dedicated just means that they're dedicated to Crescent City. It doesn't mean that those are the officers that will be the Crescent City officers. You can have 5 dedicated officers. They can be different every day.
Right.
Yeah, they won't be different every day.
No, I don't think they will be
Shares
different
that
every
all
day,
of our
but-
zones are assigned to that zone for a period of time. However, the sheriff does absolutely reserve the right to transfer that deputy, promote that deputy, make him a detective, allow them to apply for any specialty team they want to, for performance reasons or whatever the case may be, like we would any of our other deputies in our other zones, to move them as needed for operational continuity. But generally speaking, our deputy sheriffs, for example, your neighboring zone is East 5, which is the greater Crescent City area. That's the same deputy sheriff until said time as he applies for K-9, wants to be a detective, promotes to sergeant, promotes to corporal, or transfers to a whole other division. So that those moves would go, but reasonably speaking, they remain very constant. So we'll accept, Jay, you have some suggested wording in there that you'd like for us to look at, but what we're not going, what we can't put ourselves in the position of is seeking permission from the city to transfer a deputy or doing that type of stuff. Obviously, we have to maintain that.
Should,
That
should,
right.
should.
And we're not asking for that, I don't think, in any way, shape, or form. What we need is to make sure that the language clarifies that we're going to have a regular patrol of officers that are customarily assigned. And you've all had this list, so it should be nothing of surprise to you what's in here. I didn't see anything in here about the procedure for providing backup to the sheriff's office or vice versa, or that was reviewed verbally. I don't see that, and Jay has this list. Another item that was of concern is on page 2, paragraph 2B. It just says the sheriff's office shall designate a supervisor to act as the liaison between the city and the sheriff's office. There's nothing in here about what rank that will be or how much time that individual would spend in Crescent City. The sheriff talked in a public meeting about being available to meet with Crescent City residents so many days a week. So the rank and the frequency of being in Crescent City is not here.
I think that we could put something in there that, shall designate a supervisor and give a rank lieutenant, captain above.
We
and
would
then
agree to that.
also-
I thought that might be somewhere else. We can
Okay.
certainly put here that the rank of that person is captain. We
Okay.
can certainly,
Okay,
we can do that.
so it'd be a ranking captain, and then also the
Which is
sheriff will
district commander,
determine,
yes.
the sheriff will determine that schedule. We can't require,
And with the fluid nature of law enforcement,
You can't say.
it may be hard to lock us down into exactly how many hours a week, when you talk about that. But we've had discussions about several days a week operating out of the Crescent City office, and that's kind of where we're looking at. But, we can certainly identify the captain rank for sure. That'll be your district commander, which, but just for informational purposes, because we have to move people around from time to time, and so the district commander for the East District, effective April the 4th, will be Captain David Ussery. We transferred Captain Woods and Captain Ussery.
Right, but also what concerns me, and I asked for these contracts to be forwarded to the other commissioners. I sent to Jay and to Michael contracts from Pearson, Bel Air Beach, and Brooksville.
they forwarded them to us.
Okay, I just want to make
We
sure.
all-
Last night.
Last
Okay,
night,
That's fine. Oh,
No, it's not, but you
I'm
sent me, I got 3 packages last night of what 3 other cities did in this same case. And if you read those contracts, Commissioner Vito, they all say basically what we're saying in this contract.
okay.
But it's not fair for you to send me 3 packages the night before the meeting.
Okay.
And
I'm
Brooksville, we
different on
already had the Brooksville one, because we've been talking to Brooksville. So we already had the Brooksville contract, but thank you for doing that, and we all did get those contracts.
Okay, so,
Why don't we just hopping on?
I'm not here to compare contracts. I'm here to talk about this contract.
Right.
okay, well,
That's why I'm here.
hang on just a second.
How we gonna,
No, I'm quite serious.
Brooksville to Crescent City?
Well,
Yeah.
There's a reason for that, if I can please finish. The contract in Brooksville was developed by looking at other contracts of cities who had done this before. And there's a lot of very helpful things in there. One of the things that we are losing as we lose the police chief is somebody to have a regular consultation with our city manager. And actually, I'm not sure that this contract specifies who the sheriff's office will have.
It's in there.
Yeah, it is
It's in there.
I'm
I'm
sorry,
not sure if you start reading this somewhere.
everybody is talking out loud.
Some of the same thing that's going on over, and over. I don't understand why.
Well, again, I'm not here to do comparisons of different cities. I mean, you can compare apples to oranges to tomatoes. They're all fruits. You got 3 different cities that you're looking at. They had contracts made for what they needed done and covered. And this is the contract that Jay and Alex made for Crescent City is what we need. And we should respect that, Lisa.
I'm sorry.
Um,
I had a question about the level of supervisor that would be reporting to Crescent City. And without looking at any other contracts, I'm sorry, and also make it clear that they would be the liaison with our city manager. So essentially,
Yeah, I think that page 3.2 speaks to that. Billing could include a process procedure to provide timely notifications of any significant incidents occurring with the city. The city shall, notices would be to the city manager, his or her designee, we deal with that. But that rank is a captain. The captain is an executive
Okay,
level
Sorry,
sheriff's
where are you
appointee.
reading for a while?
What?
Where are you reading? You said-
Page 3-2. Actually, I'm sorry, 3J. I have a hard time reading it now. Blows me a little bit. 3J goes into that will provide upon request data concerning calls for service, location, nature, this, that, and the other time of notification of the liaison with the city manager.
I don't have a 3J.
Page 3J.
Look at three.
Page 3. Okay, page not paragraph. Okay,
I'm sorry, page 3.
okay, right, all right, so. Upon request, what was represented to us verbally was that you would have a designated supervisor who would be at our city commission meeting to give us the update. This is upon request, which is a little bit different.
If the request of the city manager is we'll be at the city commission meeting, then we're following his upon request. So again, we made that commitment to you that we'll present at the city commission meeting. That's exactly the conversation I had with Captain Usher today when we began discussing this. So, you know, I mean, I think we'll be happy to look at any wording that you would like, but I think that we could have a 245,000 page contract here by the time we cover every possibility that could occur in the world of law enforcement. But we have committed not only that presence in the office so that he's directly accountable to the city manager, but also to make these presentations and to do anything else the city manager asks him to do.
Yes, Mayor.
Yes, Commissioner Banks.
Mr. Chairman. You know, I had just foresaid that, I called the city manager, and he was out and with a problem. And immediately, he called the sheriff office and somebody took care of him. Immediately. And you can't do no pushing that. Regardless of whether it's a corporal, or sergeant, lieutenant, the matter got took care of.
Thank you.
It's easy though to commit, as we already have verbally in writing, that we will attend every city commission meeting, any other meeting requested by the city manager.
That's easy. You can just put ensure deputy sheriff or ranking captain or whatever you want to would
Sure.
be available all regularly scheduled Crescent City Commission.
Right.
Okay, so, and I'll get back to we're losing certain things when we lose the chief position. But also I noticed.
Lisa,
Okay, hang on, I've got a specific thing. On page 2, paragraph 2E, it says vehicles will be appropriately marked. It doesn't specify that they'll have the city logo, or that they would say City of Crescent City, or that it would be mutually agreed upon. I mean, it just says appropriately marked. I think we could be a little more specific about that.
The sheriff did say in a couple of our meetings that they would have the sheriff's logo on top and Crescent City's logo under with our logo.
and I know Captain Woods is working on this. I've sent him I sent him a couple, or at least what others have done where it's, and I know he was working on trying to see, you know, with the sheriff's department as far as a logo that we could have on there.
I have information to that.
You do?
He told me directly, he was thinking about having the high school art class have a contest to make some designs for us to choose from.
He
Let's
is,
not tie his hands.
he is,
Yeah.
he is.
You know,
I
just
think
one of the
it's,
interesting ideas that's already come out, and I'll share it with you, I actually kind of liked it. Of course, we certainly would be having the city review it, is the bell of Crescent City sitting on one of the points of our star. So you have the sheriff's star and the bell of Crescent City is sitting on it, then with the words Crescent City out the next side. So I've started seeing those kind of things. So like she sits on the moon there, she's sitting on a point of the star.
Right.
and
You know, just some ideas are already floating.
he mentioned that one to me as well. If for some reason the high school, you know, if that didn't work out, And I like that too. As a matter of fact, I was texting back with him about, getting a picture of the bell, because the fire station, our fire department, is a beautiful, their emblem has got the bell, and she's very vibrant, and she's right there, and so.
Okay, so I guess my question is, because originally when Judy made the motion, she said the city logo, that was something she said. My suggestion was that we at least say it would be mutually agreed upon. But the question is, do we want to leave it up to the sheriff, or do we want to have some input on what the markings of the cars look like? Because we're paying for these officers, and including equipment, and my understanding is we are trying to purchase municipal services. So I would assume we would want it clearly marked for Crescent City, and that we would want to have something to do with that. But
Refresh my memory on what letter you're on here, to what?
E.
to E is an Edward.
It's on E.
It just says appropriately marked. It doesn't say, that
You
it
could
would be
put
by
shall
mutual
prominent
agreement.
display on the vehicle's exterior, the city of Crescent City, and an agreed upon logo or emblem.
I have no problem with the
Okay.
city reviewing any proposed marking changes that we make.
But Mayor, did I hear you say that it should specifically say city of Crescent City?
No, I said city of Crescent City or an agreed upon emblem.
So to me, I think somewhere it should say city of Crescent City, so people know that this is the coverage that we are paying for.
And they could, Brooksville, all they did, it was very boring, they just put, I'm sorry, but they just put Brooksville. That's all it has on there is Brooksville. And so, I know what they're trying to do is they want something that really stands out. So possibly that's something they could put into the emblem is Crescent City.
They want something that identifies
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This is our.
Just some of my experience now, especially around, not that I worked ever down there, but I travel to South Florida a lot because there's good fishing and scuba diving, but you see a lot of this in South Florida, and really what you see is like, on the green stripe on the sheriff's car, you'll see like City of Dayton
Mhm.
or something in those lines, but we really wanted to take it a step further. We're happy to have you review that, and of course, one of the things that we're adamant about is, we will never remove the American flag from our car. So we just need to make sure that all this will work, but we'll be happy to take anybody's input on it. Because we want the citizens of Crescent City to be proud of this car when they see it coming through, and we want to make sure we do it justice. That's why I thought that some of the ideas that some of the art kids already kind of talking
Yeah.
about some of the ideas.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Banks.
It'd be much more professional to just put city of Crescent City. You ain't got to worry about the bells and stars. If it's city of Crescent City, that will let the citizens know that that is part of Crescent City.
I have to say, I agree with
What
that
are
one.
we trying to do?
They were just trying to make it pretty. Come on, Commissioner Banks.
We can do whatever.
I have no influence. I had no influence in that, but they were trying to put together some really nice artwork.
There'll be other places for the bell riding on the star if we need to.
Well, guys, Mayor,
Commissioner DeVito, yeah.
Okay. This is a very serious contract. This will take up still both to our entire ad valorem tax income. It is for 3 years under the terms of the contract, but in reality, this is for perpetuity. Because unless we become a much more wealthy city, we are making this agreement forever because we wouldn't be able to afford to go back the other way. So I encourage us to think not just of Gator Deloach, who we know, and Colonel Wells, who we know, but to keep in mind that we are making an agreement that will take up our entire law enforcement budget for, I'm sure, the next 10 years.
Okay, I think we all understand that. And nobody's taking this lightly.
No. Right.
So with that,
Yeah.
you want to proceed with your other changes that you have concerns
I'm
about?
identifying things here that I think we need to be cognizant of and make sure they're taken
Okay.
care of. Page 3, paragraph 2K, special event. Let me see if that's still here. Okay. And I'm sorry, Colonel Wells, I did not get time to ask you for a copy of this. This is about special events. We discussed at the last meeting. It says the sheriff's office will provide security and traffic detail deputies to support special events. Colonel Wells said that that would be at no additional charge. I think you said that at the last meeting.
That's correct. Just we've never charged any of our municipality for any event that supports the municipality or a not-for-profit. So just to give an example, we've never asked Bostwick for anything for the Blueberry Festival, Palatka for anything for the Catfish, or, I'm sorry, Catfish is y'all.
Yeah, or whatever.
We're, the only time we charge for that type of services is, let's say, the Parker House does an event that's going to require deputy sheriffs doing traffic. That's a for-profit entity, and
Right.
we'll bill them for that. That's correct.
Okay, so what I'm just saying is that that particular thing doesn't seem to be reflected, like no charge to nonprofit events. And as well, we don't have a copy of the PCSO's policies and procedures. And my concern here about special events is, you know, the city in the past has permitted those events, and the chief was the person who handled our permit. So at this point, where are we on that under this contract?
I couldn't hear part of what you said. The
Okay.
chief did what?
Okay, the chief was basically our permit personnel for all events.
Okay.
If there was going to be a permit, he would look at traffic and logistics and safety and get the names of the vendors and whatever. The permits were done through the police department, and they would come, the police chief would be basically the point person for a large permit. So where does that leave us for permits for large events? I'm sure y'all are interested in the birthday party of 10 people.
Right.
But for large events, where does that leave us for someone to do the actual planning and, you know, a whole safety plan for the whole event?
Correct. So let me answer this first, and then I'll ask Jay and Alex for their opinion. Is I don't believe that it has been part of our contract, our discussions about us issuing permits. I think that that's a responsibility that would fall on the city. However, we will act as that district commander. That same district commander would be your point and your liaison. And they will develop operational plans. We require all operational plans for any event that requires usually 5 deputies or more is kind of where we look at that. So operational plans, we have developed operational plans for years in conjunction with the police department out here for the Catfish. I just approved an operational plan today for a funeral tomorrow. So anything that is a big operation like that, we will act in that capacity. That captain, your district commander, will act in that capacity to provide the operational plans, to make sure that those events are staffed, to make sure that anything that is needed for public safety, such as traffic cones, signboards, any of that type of stuff is obtained. He'll do that.
Right, so when we're in the position of needing to issue the permit, does that mean that the district commander will work with our city manager to get what we need in the permit for a major event?
I think so. I think that the way that process would work, and we can spell it out, as soon as the city manager gets an application for permit, if it has any type of traffic or public safety implication, then his first call should be to the district commander. They'll meet and develop an operational plan.
So, and you said traffic and what was it?
Public safety. So it may not be a traffic issue, but if there's a public safety, like, for example, the fireworks. Yes, they kind of have both of them. There's a safety and traffic. So anytime that there's a traffic, public safety, or any other concern that the city manager believes needs a law enforcement assistance, his first call should be to the district commander to review those plans, develop an op plan, to do a minimum staffing plan, and to staff out of that. We agree to that, absolutely.
Okay, so with respect to the contractor, my concern is that there should be some language in here that covers what that service that you described, so it's clear that in future, our city manager, who's gonna be a new one anyway, that relationship is reflected in the contract, the coordination between the city manager and the sheriff's office.
Right, so would it suffice if we added to K, which says PCSO shall provide security and traffic detail deputies to support special event activities occurring within the city? Of course, we talked about our policy, PCSO shall cooperate with the city and follow the city procedures in the permitting of special events. Special details for which deputies must be dedicated or assigned at an event shall be worked out with the sponsoring agency.
You
Okay,
could
so-
put city manager, just put city manager.
Yeah,
I just want it to be clear that the sheriff's office is providing the expertise for
okay,
the traffic and safety planning for special events.
I've got that because I even have that underlined and it says follow the city procedures in the permitting of special events and that they would, that was never a question in my mind. That this was not clear that they would take care of that portion and he would take care of the permitting part of it.
But add city manager makes it more
Yeah.
specific.
Makes it more specific.
we can clarify there, and, you know, as the district commander shall work directly with the city manager and develop a safety plan surrounding events. We don't have any issues with that.
Okay.
I mean, that was my concern, that we make sure that we, for sure, have
Okay.
their expertise on the
Okay,
development of their
next.
safety plan.
I think just in the past, we just had worked with the chief, but after the chief, and,
Right, that's the
we'll be
city
happy to
manager.
liaison directly with the city manager,
Yeah.
or his or her designee.
Right, so because we've kind of lost that person, right, and another issue is, and there, I think there were some questions from the public, about whether or not the sheriff's office would provide regular traffic services. In other words, if there's a crash within the city limits, are y'all gonna work that crash?
Generally speaking, the highway patrol does not work crashes of inside municipalities.
Right.
So we had a conversation with the local district commander of the highway patrol about this in preparation. First of all, part A of the conversation was, look, we're covering in Crescent City on an overtime basis right now. Generally, the highway patrol in the county works all traffic crashes that do not occur on private property. However, there's a caveat to that, and that is the deputies do work traffic crashes when there's an extensive wait time for highway patrol. That will apply in the city, because the highway patrol has no agreement with the city of Crescent City to work those traffic crashes. Now, we've already spoken to them about the possibility, and they have agreed that they will, upon our request, work traffic crashes that occur in Crescent City that are life-threatening or trauma alert rated injuries, because that is their level of expertise. They work all of those. They do the same for other municipalities. Other than that, the sheriff's office will work the crashes and any other traffic enforcement in Crescent City, just like we have been now.
Right, because I mean, the bottom line is, we're contracting for services over and above. These are really supposed to be the municipal services that we formerly provided for ourselves. So I just want to be sure that it is clear, that you're gonna provide the regular traffic services.
And there was some misinformation out there as well. There was some misinformation about with the highway patrol and them having to respond to all of our wrecks. And I think it was what, we had 11 and only one of those they responded to, and the deputy, they responded to 10 of those. Is that correct in the last?
I wrote whatever the number was, but I do remember
Yeah.
the count. I could only find one.
There was only one that they had responded to, that there was a rumor that they kind of pushed out there. Somebody had that they were having to respond, they were having to take up the weight of awesome.
Even though we have the agreement in the county that the highway patrol handles all wrecks in the county now on private property, our deputy sheriff still handles 65% of the wrecks in Bucks County.
Yeah.
Because the highway patrol's response time. There is no sense, and there's in no good conscience, are we gonna leave a citizen on the side of the road for 45 minutes or an hour waiting for a trooper when the deputy's available and the trooper's coming from the bottom in the St. John's County.
Yeah.
So we still work the majority of them in the county. It is our protocol that the first thing we do is contact FHP to see if they're available and what is their response time. Based on their response time and severity of injuries, our supervisors in the field make a judgment call. We're not gonna wait, definitely goes ahead and works it. So we do work a considerable amount in the county.
So it's more of a coordination between the agencies. Okay, Commissioner DeVito, what else do you have?
No, not exactly. I mean, to me, if their services to us are going to include traffic crash services, I would think that would be one thing we would want to have specifically in the contract,
I would not.
no?
I would not. I think that
They're
you're
working
tying
down
their
all the
hands.
time anyway.
You're tying their hands in that
Right,
regard.
right.
And so I just let them do their job.
Right.
Let them do their job.
Well, okay, but this is a contract about what we're purchasing, so I'm not understanding what.
He just said that what happens, okay, Commissioner DeVito, if one of our deputies is responded to a burglary, I can never pronounce that, a robbery, I should have said it that way, a robbery. Okay, that's one of those things that just always gets me, okay, responding to a robbery. We have a rec out here. He can't do both. There's one on duty. They've got to be able to have that ability to coordinate, and if they need the highway patrol to come
This
in
is not
and do
anything
that.
about taking away from their ability to coordinate. This is specifying a basic service. It is covered elsewhere in the contract and the legal language somewhere. But of course, they have the ultimate ability to prioritize who does what, where. It's just a specified service.
Well, I think that falls into law enforcement. Does that not fall into law enforcement?
Exactly. I mean, we're constitutionally and statutorily required to work crashes. So,
Whatever. It's,
Not
I don't see a
whatever.
reason it can't be listed and specified, but if you don't
It
want to
doesn't
list
have
it
to be,
specified.
it's just the way it is. It's what they do.
No, okay.
It's their job.
A contract is for clarity. We're buying services. It is normal in a contract to say what you're buying.
And I think we've spelled that out. They've spelled that out. Is there some language that you've developed that you would like put in there?
No, because it's really not my job as a commissioner to develop the language.
Well,
Well, it's.
I mean, if you have a
Well,
suggestion,
if you
suggest a lesson.
contract law, you're supposed to enforce the law.
That's
If the
right.
law, if the law says that work crashes, then you work crash.
I mean, that's your job.
Okay,
It's a given. They're gonna do it.
well, that's what we're discussing here, but this is a contract for services specifically for Crescent City.
Okay, let's
And
continue
we-
discussion.
Okay, we should be arguing for clarity that benefits us, not arguing away the ability to.
I don't feel that
clear
we
language
are.
in here.
At no point do I think we're doing everything we possibly can to look out for us. And that's why we're here tonight. We're going through this pretty much line by line. But at the same time, we have to understand that we cannot tie.
I'm not talking about tying anybody's hands. We are not directing.
Okay, then what are you looking for? So what do you want to add to the contract? That's what I'm trying to get at. What can we add to the contract that will
Well,
To clarify
give
that
you comfort?
in the normal course of business, they'll be responsible for working the traffic crashes in the city.
would,
So where you put it.
would it make everybody happy if we put law enforcement and traffic enforcement services?
Correct.
That works for me. Does that work for you, Commissioner
whatever it
DeVito?
takes to
I think-
make Commissioner
I think the
DeVito happy.
intention here was, and I'm certainly willing to do, obviously because we're not giving, I mean, that's not anything we had already planned to do. I think that we could put both the sheriff's office and the city in a bad position if we start dictating individual services, because not that it would ever happen, I'm positive with this administration, but if you got a previous sheriff later or somebody that said, hey, you guys forgot to add, alarms, I'm not going to your alarms. But that's a general law enforcement service. So it's all law enforcement and traffic enforcement services. Will that work?
Sure, that works
Okay.
fine. And as you pointed out, it's for the future as,
Okay.
as well.
Okay,
Speaking of specific services, Jay mentioned that the county said they did not want to have anything to do with animals or code enforcement. But we do, if we don't get your assistance in those two areas, I think we are going to be missing something here.
you do not do animal control.
Crescent City adopted the county's animal control ordinance. Or do you have your own animal control?
Right, we have our own animal control ordinance. It's been my understanding, that if there's a dangerous animal out or an animal running around somewhere, or if somebody has a dog off leash, that it's appropriate for a law enforcement officer to, tell the person their dog is supposed to be on a leash, or in a dangerous situation, help corral an animal.
Right.
And
Absolutely. Matter of fact, the last meeting we were here, I spoke with the county, because county animal control handles, do they pick the animals up for the city of Crescent
Yeah,
City?
and they park, yes.
Okay.
There's one assigned to this area.
So we were here last time, I spoke with the county animal control officer who parks here, and I happened to speak, and I said, hey, do you handle Crescent City, the city? So if a vicious dog, there's a dog attack tonight, and the law enforcement needs to pick up, he goes, oh yeah, he goes, matter of fact, that's where I just came from, the deputy just called me from up in Dixie, that they had a dog that was chasing people to the parking lot or something like that, and he had gone and picked it up. So those services always agree. Now, if Crescent City, and then get the attorney something have a specific animal control ordinance they want us to enforce, it's as simple as, just like the other ordinances we talked about, didn't we get that taken care of, where we can enforce the ordinances of Crescent City? Yes, very soon. Yeah, we enforce county animal control all the time. We handle animal bites. We call animal control 24/7 to pick up injured or vicious animals. Absolutely, animals are a big part of our.
Okay, because I just wanted to clarify that because it's been a little up in the air, and Jay made it sound like he would not do that, because obviously a problem that we have is that it's very hard for animal control to get down here. By the time they get here, whatever animal is reported to them is long gone.
Same way in the county.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
But I'm saying we're about the farthest south to be, so we suffer from that. So, okay, and the other item, and this is important, enforcement of local ordinances such as contractors working before and after hours or on holidays without permits. We don't have, this is language that I'm reading out of another contract that I think is something we need. We don't have staff that work outside of 9 to 5. Our public works people go home. We don't have dedicated park employees. So
We have, I beg your pardon, we have a call out person.
we have a what?
We do have a call out person, he's on call.
He's on call, right?
Who?
His name is Ronnie, but he's on call
We have
anything,
two.
anything go wrong. We call the city, they go to the recording and they'll leave his phone.
And
They're dispatched.
And that's something that's not necessarily a criminal offense, is it? So
Right.
they could only enforce, correct me, but they can only enforce those ordinances that are of criminal, is that correct, of criminal
That's
nature?
Yes, our deputy sheriffs by this contract will be vested with the same police powers that your city police officers have. So any ordinances that are also dual designated as criminal ordinances, we would be able to enforce. I'm not quite sure building code permits and such are in your ordinance are criminal in nature. But I'd be willing to take a look at your ordinances if you'd like me to.
Right, because obviously the problem is that you have someone building a structure that has no permit, that, by the time Monday morning rolls around, I mean.
Then our code enforcement officer, somebody should be contacting our code enforcement officer.
Well, as far as I know, there's no provision. I've never heard about anybody being on call after hours.
Well, I don't know where you've been, cause we've been had that in place for years. Yeah, man, special man, we pay him.
We have gas department and public works department on call.
On call.
Don't you contract through the county for your permitting here in the city?
Yes, we do.
Then that's a county code enforcement. issue.
County.
Not a law enforcement issue.
Okay. Sometimes over the weekend, there are things that may be occurring that probably should be caught before Monday morning rolls out. But you're saying unless it's a criminal offense, that you would not be involved in it.
That is correct. There's a lot of code enforcement, and I can assure you, I would be surprised almost positive that Crescent City didn't enforce building code because it required a whole separate certification as a code enforcement officer to handle that.
Right.
So no, we will not touch or enforce anything that is building code, building related type ordinance. Anything else we would is as your code dictates, law enforcement officer may handle.
Okay, with this, I mean, that leaves us somewhat uncovered, and then,
I don't believe you were covered in the past.
Yeah, you
Crescent
don't-
City
you've never
officers
been
don't
covered
have
that way.
jurisdiction to enforce building code.
So,
just not building codes, but when someone is conducting an activity without a permit,
That's a building code.
that's a building code issue.
well, okay.
Actually, our code enforcement was informed by people that people are building without a permit.
Right, so it was identified that we have weekend activities that are going on.
Every community has weekend activities. We'll set up a barbecue on Friday evening at 5:30 in the afternoon. That happens often. In that regard, you know, we're going to have to, I think us as a city, we're going to have to address that in our ordinances. And who we're going to have that's going to respond to that. If that's something that we have a call out to a code enforcement officer, and then they contact the state and they come in there and they have them shut down. But that's not something that they can, I think, within their purview, that they can handle, that they're supposed to handle.
I don't think we have the jurisdiction into that.
Okay,
We don't handle that in the unincorporated areas of the county.
okay, that's fine. Moving right along, we'll make notes to look at that another day. House and vacation check. We used to have a vacation check ability. You could sign up. Does the sheriff's office have that? Do we have the ability to have that continue?
Yes, it's under general law enforcement services. Any citizen of the county may contact the sheriff's office communication center and get set up what's called an extra patrol. That's electronically transmitted to the deputy sheriffs, and then they are required to check that periodically throughout their shift. And each time they do, they log into the online system indicating that they checked and what they found. So when the citizen gets home, if they want to, they can request that record and they can see all the dates and times that they checked. It's called an extra patrol for us.
Okay, so in paragraph 7, which I think is on page 5, where it lists the services the city recognizes that will indirectly receive the benefit of the following services associated with law enforcement. Could we add that to it? Like, you've got victim advocate, public record, blah, blah. Could we add vacation check to that?
Yeah, we can add that. I mean, it's a general law enforcement service. I mean, I don't have on here that if you're broken down the road, we'll stop and help you. I don't have on here that, you know, if a rescue needs help forcing entry into a house to take care of a heart attack, we'll respond to that. It's a general law enforcement service.
And I think if you're gonna put that in there, you would want something if requested by the citizen, because you just don't want that a general statement, that if you're on vacation, they're gonna know and they're gonna come by and check your house. So we have to be real careful with that language.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. The citizens will request it, and what they'll do is they'll tell us, these are the cars that should be there, or I have a dog walker that comes through these hours of the day, and all that type of stuff. The person taking that entry logs all that into the extra patrol. It's not only for vacation. Anybody can call in. A citizen can call in and say, hey, I feel like I've had some, I found trash on my business property in the morning. Somebody's been trespassing. Can I have an extra patrol up on my business? And then all that gets entered into the log for a period of time and designated a priority. And then it's logged in all of those checks.
Right, but well, vacation check usually has that specific meaning. I mean, I'm talking about what we had here, where you fill out the little form. And not that the sheriff spies on you, but almost everywhere I've lived has had that, whether it's police or whatever.
Well, and he says that they provide that, and you're asking him to add that in here, and what I'm saying is if you do, you just have to make sure that you say citizen requested. I would think you'd want citizen requested in that.
Or program. You know.
So, okay.
Okay, so animals are not going in here. Okay, so a question I have for the city. The sheriff's office says it will not provide traffic engineer services.
I have some language for that, and there was some confusion with that as well, because Colonel Wells I think we had all talked about that they would if asked. So it's, when you come in here, because I know that everybody is saying that they're not going to do that, and it said, so maybe if Colonel Wells called upon by the city or FDOT to give information.
Okay, can you refer me to the?
It's gonna be on page 2F, because they've said that they will give that, they'll give that, but that they're not going to act as an engineer.
But I guess what I was saying is we're losing that little ground. We had a chief of police and the chief wasn't a traffic engineer either. But when we wanted to consult where to put the speed bumps or a stop sign, it's really a consultation.
I think that's exactly correct. We cannot act as a traffic engineer. I don't know that I have any civil engineers on staff. However, we may be called upon to give information if available concerning statistics, i.e. traffic accidents at a particular location, amount of traffic arrests, etc. So we'll provide any data that's needed to make those decisions or provide recommendations. I just can't be an engineer.
Right, it's not the data. I know the data's in there, but recommendations would be very helpful because otherwise we don't really have a place to get traffic recommendations. And we don't have an engineer, and I know you're not an engineer, but we still need, there's a certain in-between level of expertise that the only place to go for it really is law enforcement.
Well, I think the data, they're gonna provide the data, but honestly, that's gonna be something that we, the city, are gonna have to bear as far as, and we should be bearing that anyway. I mean, I don't know that the chief.
You know what a traffic engineer is, right? They specialize in the design and maintenance of safe roads and highways. They find ways to make traffic flow smoothly and find ways to economically build and maintain them. That really doesn't sound like a police officer to me.
No.
No, I know that. What I'm
Okay,
saying
well,
is we have a service, we had a professional expertise that was provided by our chief when it came to things like the placement of stop signs and speed bumps. But for sure, you're saying that there's a liability issue if you provide recommendations or consultation.
I think that our district commander would be empowered to, if, they're having an issue, to certainly begin that discussion with the city manager. I don't think that it's enough for you to make, final decisions that, hey, or, we want stop signs put here. But I mean, that would be a natural discussion we would have with city managers about traffic.
Especially if you see a pattern.
I certainly think that we can have those discussions. We've had it before about, hey, can we put some parking signs here? We deal with the county and that type of stuff. So, concerning statistics, traffic crash and accidents, and I mean, that's certainly not out of the purview. We wouldn't talk about that.
I think that was the bulk of what I had for, I guess, how this contract would work. Although I do think that it would be better for the city if we had some more specific assurances about the availability of the district commander, and as well the issue of, yes, the district commander will be, hopefully that language will be in here at that regular city commission meeting.
I've made that note.
They already made that note.
The captain, the rank of the captain, full service.
Because in the past, somehow it just worked out. Either the chief was here or the sergeant or somebody. The police department did provide a level of security at city meetings. So I'm not really sure what is going to be the outcome when we have our 5 deputies per shift and the district commander. We don't specifically have an arrangement for security at city meetings. I mean, right now we have the very nice deputy standing in back. Thank you very much.
Well, before we only had the police chief was here. He would give the report, and for the most part, he was.
Right, but he stayed the whole meeting. He was here from.
And I expect that of the district commander will be here at the meeting. And then, so we'll operate the same way we do at the county, that we guarantee the deputy sheriffs are present for the county commission meetings, the entirety. And then any other meeting that the county deems necessary, all the county administrator, as opposed to city administrator, will contact us and say, hey, we've got a contentious workshop today, or with them, a lot of times it has to do with, issues coming up with the Board of Adjustment and that type of stuff. So we'll cover that.
It does not really, it doesn't specify that in here, security at city commission meeting.
Well,
And that would be great.
But it will be likely most of the time, the district commander will be at the city commission
Okay.
and will stay the entire time, because I foresee that you would still want a presentation from him on what the last 30 days look like. And that type of stuff.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, that'd be good.
Okay. All right, we can talk about city meetings.
Right, because there's two different things between reporting, I think it would be helpful that it's understood that y'all are gonna cover that security as opposed to the district commander coming in, giving a report and, going on to do.
So
other
just a
things.
quick question, will the district commander suffice for the security if he's here the whole time?
Yeah,
Okay.
Right, but
Absolutely.
it's kind of two different stuff.
Let me, while we're at it, let me ask for any direction that the board might have. Do you have recommendations, or what would you? We certainly believe that the district commander should have dedicated times inside the city limits. Of course, all that's subject to emergency. Is there specific days of the week that work better, times of the day, or how, is there any wording necessary in the contract as far as that goes?
Well, to me, I would think that would be something that should be worked out with the city manager.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
I think so, yes.
Because things change.
Sure.
I would think that would be something to be mutually agreed on between the district commander and the city manager.
Absolutely. Okay.
And then, the two things that I don't see in here that, I know Jay has commented on this before. We don't have a lease agreement for the substation. And I don't know if we need one, but it might be helpful. And as well, are we still saying that we're turning over all of our law enforcement property to the sheriff?
What's the will of the commission on that?
well,
He hasn't done a due diligence. They
I'm
can't.
sorry.
they haven't, wait, just one second. It's like, that's something that they're supposed to, I spoke to Colonel Wells about this. They haven't had an opportunity to review. And you've got this list, and I've struggled with this list over and over again because we're not even sure where a lot of this stuff is that is in our assets on this list. And we hope it's where it's supposed to be. And a lot of this stuff has wiped out on this list.
Okay, what list was that?
It's the assets list.
I'm sorry, do I have a copy of it?
You might not, I don't know. Debbie, did you give?
Nope, I wasn't in there. I think it was
Okay,
fine.
okay.
Okay, because the concerns that I raised before, and I still have this concern, is that initially we had very general language that just said we would turn over all our property, that we had not enumerated it, listed it, or valued it, which I think is essential. And as well, I don't quite understand if it's valuable, why we would give it as opposed to be getting credit. If it's something that would be valuable and of use to the sheriff, it would seem to me that we should get a financial credit for whatever the agreed upon value was.
Wait, let's say, Ms. Sykes, I'm sorry, I
Okay,
cut
so
you off.
The city hasn't done the due diligence yet to know what we own and what we are allowed to get rid of because our cars were purchased at least partially with grants.
Right,
And all of that equipment has to be assessed legally
Right.
as to the disposition of it.
and we're working, I know we're working through USDA. I requested this, just in doing my due diligence, I did request this. Just because I wanted to see what we're talking about. And on this list, we have, let's see, some computers, I believe, that were bought back in 2010, one that was bought back in 2005. Those are, those are obsolete. And that's not something he's probably gonna want to.
And I think that's where Mr. Sharp was talking, about that is the assets that are transferable, whatever that is decided to be. The cars may not be. But to address the comment that if the city gives us the cars, there should be some financial settlement to the city. That's backwards. If you don't give us the cars, where am I getting them from? The county taxpayers? So again, we didn't figure that in. Let's say that it doesn't happen and you can't give us a car. That's okay. I've had our fleet manager set back 5 cars out of our tended to be traded in with us because we did a very large fleet addition this year. Almost 50% of our cars traded as we convert to an all SUV fleet. So we have the cars, but your price figured in, and again, I'm just want to make sure you're aware, the price figured in doesn't include the cost of cars off the front. So the county will eat that cost if you can't give us cars. Doesn't include the firearms being bought right up front. It doesn't include the uniforms right up front. What it does include is a 5-year amortization. So on Officer A, at the 5th year, you will have built up a little bit of equity in Officer A so that I can replace his car, his bulletproof vest, his taser, and his not firearm, we need to replace it. The bulletproof vest, his taser, his car, and his uniforms. Every 5 years, they'll get all of that brand new. For the little bit amount that's built in, that's why those per officer dollar figures are high, because it has the built-in equipment. So we never come to the city and say, hey, all the officers you're paying for need new cars, I need $200,000. That'll never happen to the amortization schedule. But there isn't any built-in up front. So if whatever doesn't transfer, equipment-wise, to supply these 5 officers, the sheriff's office is going to have to come up with, and we agreed to do that. But any equipment that does transfer over just goes towards supplying those officers.
So, and I mean, this is the kind of thing that has to be worked out, and you made a proposal and that wasn't taken into consideration up front, and that's fine. But certainly from the city point of view, it's our responsibility to know what our property is and what we're agreeing to hand over. There just needs to be some clarity on that.
I don't argue that. I just took objection to your statement that if you gave us a card, we gave you money.
Well, I wouldn't exactly say you owe us money, but it's fair. I think it's fair for us to say, consider paying us for them because they were our cars. And I understand where you're coming from. I heard what you said. You didn't plan on it when you made the offer, and that's fine. I'm not trying to be adversarial about it. I'm just trying to work out the brass tacks. But I think on our side, our responsibility, and I think, is to know what property we're handing over, and ultimately, it seems like that should be included as an exhibit in the contract as to what we're supposed to be giving you and what you're receiving.
The reason we've been able to do that is we're not clear what exactly the officers were in possession of. We don't know how old their computers are. I can tell you I can't use 2010 computers, so I don't want them.
Yeah.
So I don't have any idea what what the age and the amount of round count to their firearms are. All those things that trigger replacement, right? We just don't really know that. So, and we don't have any of that in our possession. I believe the officers are still in possession of their firearms.
Right. I'm talking about our responsibility.
Right. So I think over time we can discuss that amicably, just figure out is there anything worth transferring or not. We just don't
And
have
that
any
is
idea
not,
what it
then
is.
we would just here in the city, then we would have to surplus that out. And I know in talking to Brooksville, she'll tell you the same thing. The sheriff's office looked at it and they acquired that, or they took over that which worked for them and the rest of it. And she says 2 years out, or Mark said, actually 2 years out, they're still trying to surplus stuff that they had left over. But
I think you're on the right track. You have a list of our assets, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's approved.
And the thing about these assets though, is when you look at them, and Debbie and I have had extensive conversations over this. Yes, we can't look at the acquired value. We have to look at where we are today. And if you back these cars out, really and truly, we're looking at possibly $26,571 that we have that still has to be depreciated out. That's the depreciated value right now that we have to depreciate out. So let me ask you a question, Colonel Wells. Do you have a ballpark, I mean, how much the sheriff's office has expended in their overtime pay to cover the city for the last, since December 4th?
I don't, because I haven't checked it recently, and I do think you and I talked about that, and I didn't do it. I know the last time that I reported that we were approaching $30,000, and that's been 38%.
Okay. So, you know, and at the same time, Commissioner DeVito, I understand what you're saying, but, you know, having been in government, some of this is, the inventory of it might not be up to par at this point in time. So the inventory, so we really don't even know where, you know, some of this, we have bikes, we have 7-speed bikes that were bought in
Mayor,
05.
that's my point, is that if we're saying we're going to give them property, we should know what we have and what we're giving. One thing that I've been puzzled about for this whole process is there's a lot that we're doing tonight that would normally be would have been taken care of on our behalf by the city manager. And I'm just curious as to why the city manager is not inventorying or taking care of finding out what the property inventory is and why that falls to the mayor.
It doesn't fall to the mayor. I took it upon myself. I mean, I took it upon myself to do my due diligence. It's like you took it upon yourself to contact those cities about their contracts. I mean, I took it upon myself. I wanted to know what we were talking about. That question has come up as far as the merchandise. So, I mean, I took it upon myself and asked.
Right, okay.
And I think I have that right as the mayor to do that. Yes, Commissioner Banks.
You do.
Thank you.
Let me say this. Our city manager is out sick and he don't know the extent of his health. So let's don't bring him in the picture. He's gonna come back. And then that, our American, and I know she will do her due diligence, she will get with him and they'll work this out about the property.
And we will. I mean, that's going to be a combined effort. It's going to be combined with the sheriff's department. It's going to be combined with the city manager. And we also, and with Jay Asbury.
But it should be specified in the contract, and I'm not speaking to what the city manager didn't do the past 2 days. I'm speaking to the groundwork that we needed to have done the past couple of months to get us to where we need to be. And if I get information, I share it with everyone. So I would hope that we would also have shared with us the property inventory.
Well, you know.
Well, here's my take on it. I mean, she can share that with me.
Understanding that we did not have.
Yeah.
So, and that wasn't the city manager.
I was gonna say, she can share that with me, but I'm not probably gonna be part of the conversation between Jay and the city manager and the mayor and the attorney for the sheriff about all of what's going on here. We're probably gonna be at the end of it all, once they decide where the heck everything's going.
And I think too, can we not add, when we do the transfer, can we not do an inventory list and add that to the contract? Can that be added to the contract?
So
Alex suggested that maybe in the interim, we just say to have for working upon final review of the inventory, any equipment that would benefit the current deputies that are working in Crescent City would be mutually agreed upon between the city manager and the sheriff and the transfer. Some kind of general language that once we figure out exactly what we have and what the serviceable condition is, then the city manager and us will say, hey, that's usable, it'll benefit the deputies, or it's not, and you know, whatever, however you want us to put it in. But we really don't have any idea what's usable at this point. And we don't know the status of the cars with the USDA grant at this time.
Ms. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
we also need to take into consideration that grant we just got from FDLE, we got $11,000 grant, and we've already paid for it and received money back for it. And we don't know whether we're going to have to turn that back in or not.
Is that a JAG grant or
Yeah.
is it
Yeah.
JAG?
Yes.
Okay.
We bought tasers, computer system, and some accessories for all the cars and officers.
And there's 7 roadside emergency kits, flashlights, traffic wands, first aid kits, tent meters, and an evidence tracker software.
Let it sell our stuff.
So we might have to, so we've got to work with FDLE on that as well. So we've got,
Generally speaking, if you got the grant for law enforcement use, whether you had a municipal city police department, or if you're contracting for services with us, that equipment can usually be transferred over. We have grant people at our agency that can assist you on that and clarify that. I'm not familiar with USDA, but I know anything that came through the JAG grant or FDLE, they would have no issue with transferring that property over to us.
Because JAG grants are a set amount of money that each county is entitled to without specific application. And then what happens from there, they funnel through those through the sheriff, and then the sheriff has the obligation to ask the municipality, would you like your portion of that grant? And most of the municipalities opt in, some do not. And then you follow from there, and you send out really what you want. So yeah, we deal with DOJ JAG, but we certainly can, with this Sandy Reynolds who handles our grant. And also we work very commonly with Sam Sullivan, who's the grant writer for Putnam County. I'm consulting him about the USDA grant because he's the one that's most familiar with that. But we deal with DOJ JAG, we'll help him facilitate that. However, whatever you guys want us to do on that, we're fine with that. At the end of the day, $11,000 worth of equipment isn't a significant benefit to us.
So we have, as a city, we have to account for this properly, right?
Yes.
I mean, this is something that we have to make sure if we're promising something to you that we
Oh,
are
understood.
doing what we need to do.
All I'm offering is if you would like, our grant manager can maybe just point us in the right direction or work with you, certainly at your discretion, just let me know if you want to do that.
thank you. Okay. Mr. DeVito, are you?
I don't think I have any more specific items.
Okay.
Although
Okay.
I would like to make a couple of general comments about the way this was handled and specifically something that Commissioner Burton spoke on. Commissioner Burton was critical that I look at contracts from other cities. I want to be very
I wasn't
clear.
critical of that. All I said, Commissioner DeVito, is I was not here to do comparisons tonight of Crescent City's contract with other cities.
Okay, can I finish? Yes, and you said specifically that what we had before us was the contract that quote Jay and the sheriff's attorney had drafted for us, and we should respect that.
Yes.
With all due respect, we are the commissioners, we are the ones that are supposed to decide what should be included in an optimal deal for the city. We don't necessarily give reverence to what the attorneys put before us. And it is very customary when you are going through a process like this that we've never been before. It's very customary to look at contracts from other cities.
I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you right there. I'm going to stop you right there. Okay? Because we've been going through this all night tonight. And I read everything that you have on there that you wanted shared with us. And quite frankly, I was offended because I know that Alex and Jay, that they both looked at contracts from other communities, that they've spoken to other communities, and they have been working on this for several months.
Okay, Mayor.
And you made it sound as if in this, that they had not done any of this, Commissioner DeVito. And I know for a fact they have. And if you read this contract, you'll find parts from these other contracts that are in there. So the only way they could have gotten that is they have them.
I was offended too, because the first contract I got, and she wasn't here tonight to thank Linda Young, who sent me a contract, I believe it was through, I think it was Bel Air and Bel Air Beach, that I went through with a pretty fine tooth comb, and I appreciated that she sent that to me. Now, did it compare to what we need here in Crescent City? I did not think it did. But I did appreciate that she sent it to me. I went through it, and I appreciated what it said. But you seem to think that none of us are able to do that. And we are. And so, you know,
First of all,
I'm done tonight.
Mayor, I didn't get to finish. You cut me off.
Okay, Commissioner DeVito, finish, please.
Okay. If you don't agree with me, you don't have to get mad at me.
I'm not mad at you. I just said that I
It
took
sounded like
offense.
you were mad at me.
And I took offense.
Okay. Lynn Young, by the way, got the contract from Bel Air Beach from me. And I did not see reflected. For one thing, we were not told that other communities had been consulted. We were not updated on that. And frankly, when we got the first contract from Mr. Asbury, I did not see any specific provisions in there that I thought would be very helpful to the city. I did not see any provisions in there other than boilerplate legal language that seemed to be that we needed specific services that other cities took the trouble to delineate in their contract. I did go through our first contract very, very carefully. I had 20-something points that I laid out, and it is just important that we have something that meets our needs that's going to be for 3 years and beyond, and it's going to be for over $500,000 a year. So if you don't tell us what has happened, that the sheriff's attorney and Mr. Asbury looked at other cities' contracts, there's no way for us to know that. These things should be shared with us, and frankly, I don't really see them reflected in here. But it's not appropriate to yell at me, just share it.
I'm not yelling at you. I'm not yelling at you, Commissioner DeVito, and I'm not angry, but I am frustrated. And I think some of your fellow commissioners, I speak for myself, but we are frustrated at this point. Because throughout this entire process, this is what you have done.
I'm sorry.
At every opportunity. It's what we haven't done, what everybody else has not done. And it appears you come across that you're the only one. You just said Linda Young, you took credit for giving Linda Young the contract. And so we're all doing our homework on this, I would hope, and I'm sure.
Yeah.
I have spent hours on this.
And I've talked to many mayors.
And so maybe you didn't come across that way, or you didn't think you were coming across that way, but it has come across that way. And so I'm not angry, I'm frustrated right now because we're all trying really hard to make this work.
Right, so we should be negotiating for Crescent City.
And we are.
And we are.
And we are.
I don't always see that, but we should be, I hope. so.
Well, we're gonna agree to disagree.
Sure. Absolutely.
But
And
the other thing too, you know, it's pretty upsetting. I have to agree with Jay to get all this stuff last night from you.
Right, goodness gracious.
It's like, thank you.
I should not be, and the mayor should not be the one doing the research. And I mentioned this is the kind of thing going forward as a commission when we have a new city manager that we should be depending on our city manager to do. We should not be having to do the legwork. That should be done by our professional staff, and I don't see that that was done in this case at all.
I'm sorry that you didn't see that.
Well, it's not been provided to us. We should not have to do that research. That is not the role of this commission.
Mayor?
Yes.
May I just say one thing?
Yes, sir.
I'm not talking directly. to the commission. It was my understanding in a meeting several months ago that the commission directed the city attorney to negotiate with the sheriff department and come up with an agreement. And that's what we've tried to do. We've looked at the mayor's absolutely right. Probably 75 to 80% of the contract that Mr. Sharp and I developed came from the language from other cities. I don't know, maybe that's an exaggerated percentage, but we looked at a lot of different cities. And quite frankly, the way I feel about it in those negotiations, and the way I feel about it right now is it doesn't matter if we write that 125-page contract and specify that they will pick up the little kittens and take, we can say all of that,
Okay, I'm sorry, Mayor, I've got to jump in here. There is no contract that I've looked at that's 125 pages. They're all 15 to 20 pages, and they
Could I
talk
finish,
about
Mayor? Could I finish?
an exaggeration.
Okay, both, okay, everybody.
No.
Let Mr. Asbury finish and then Commissioner DeVito, you can speak.
My point is that I felt like in negotiating with the sheriff department, that we cannot, as a city, tie them up on everything. We charge them with law enforcement. How they go about that, they've got to have some discretion. How they assign their deputies, how they move them around. The city, we can't dictate to them how that all happens. And also another point about that, one reason I didn't feel taken advantage of in those negotiations and discussions was from the simple fact that this is an agency that for 3 months has provided good law enforcement for not a penny. So I don't know why I would want to tie them down on everything that we could possibly conceive of. That's just the way I felt about it. Now, if Mr. Vito thinks I've been too slack, I can't help it.
Commissioner Banks.
I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna say good night. Look, I think Mr. Asbury and I think everyone that was involved in this contract, we're not gonna get every T crossed and every I dotted. I think we did a wonderful job to present it with us. So my hand goes out. You know, we can go for a contract over and over, and you'll find somewhere where the T is not crossed. And little nitpicking thing. I know enough about the sheriff to know that he's gonna do whatever he can do for the citizens of Crescent City to make sure they're safe. I don't have much about it.
Okay, Commissioner DeVito, you can finish.
Thank you so much for that, and I appreciate hearing everybody's view on this. I have strong reservations about this contract.
Okay.
There is a big difference. Well, yes, it is our obligation when we have contracts for this much money that every I is dotted and every T is crossed. The characteristics of contracts from other cities that I think is somewhat lacking in this one is, without being over 20 pages, very specific language to make sure that we have a little more local control for the money that we are paying, keeping in mind that this is for far in the future, past this sheriff, past this city manager, past this commission. And in my opinion, I think we could have used a second opinion to look at this contract. It is extremely important to us. And I think that our sheriff does a great job for law enforcement for the county. But when we are contracting for municipal services over and above those services with our hard-earned taxpayer money, it is our obligation to do the very best we can. And we can't do it on a handshake, and we can't say it. We know this sheriff is a good sheriff because he may not be the sheriff in 3 years. So I think that we have done good work tonight, but I am not totally comfortable with this contract, and I look forward to seeing what there is. It's too important, and there's a lot that has just been left to the last minute. So thank you all.
Thank you. And the one thing I do think that they've done a very good job in, and when you look at those other contracts, and Colonel Wells, we appreciate you doing this, is that they gave us a lockdown. This is how much this officer is going to cost us for 3 years. So we know for the next 3 years where we are. And so, you know, and a lot of those other contracts, when you read in those other contracts, that's not necessarily the case. And so I'm very appreciative of both Alex and Jay and the sheriff working through this for us. So with that, Colonel Wells, do you have something to say?
Just in closing, that you know, we certainly are willing to look at any request made. The only thing that we request at all is that once the city commission reaches a consensus on what they would like to add us to add or subtract to this contract, we'll be happy to look at that. It's obviously, and it's not occurred here, but just to, I'm sure everybody realizes there isn't any way we can legitimately negotiate with 7 people. So when the board comes to a consensus and there's anything that they want us to add, subtract, or look at, we'll be happy to take a look at any requests that you have. Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other comments? We done? Any other comments from the,
I would assume that since the contract is not finalized, it won't be voted on at the commission meeting, because there would be another review of it necessary, of course.
yeah, they will probably work together, and it might be that we're gonna have to take that up in another special, we'll have to take that up at a special meeting. We have it on the agenda right now in case we worked everything out, just to give us that option. I guess once we get the changes in there that were made tonight, you circulate those to the commission.
When, if we make the changes that we suggest tonight, not that satisfied.
We can take that up on Thursday. If some of the commission wants to take that, if we feel like, once they read through those changes, it's not going to give you a lot of time to really get those to us.
I think we can have them to the commission, the entire commission, within a couple of days,
Okay,
which would be 2 days.
which would be Thursday, so,
Probably by, Jay, I'll call you tomorrow, check my schedule, and I'll clear my calendar to go over these changes that were brought up, and we'll have
we'll
something.
just see where we are. Let's
Yes,
see where we are on Thursday. We have the option if we
And it
want
may
to.
be too quick, maybe.
And it might be too quick, so.
But
But we appreciate you coming down here today. We appreciate everything that, everybody's done for this. And with that, I'm going to adjourn this workshop at 8:30. Thank you.